All right, sentences with verbs. I will probably clip this segment from the video and post it separately because we have a lot of students that are still struggling with this. And they're struggling with translating Hebrew sentences because you're not going through the two-stage process of translation. What a lot of students are doing, and I'll come down here to a practice item. Let's go to a long, complex sentence, like let's just do number 1 to start with here, okay? All right. So sentence number 1 here, the 2 stages of translation are stage 1 is analyzing the Hebrew word, which you guys are doing. You're doing great at that. All right, but that's just stage 1. Stage 1, analyze the Hebrew words. Don't get bogged down when there's a bunch of words. Just go one at a time. Don't get bogged down when there's a bunch of stuff you don't recognize. Just one word at a time. Go through the steps of parsing to try to figure out what you're looking at. Don't get overwhelmed by everything. Just go one word at a time. All right, so first word, we've got shalach. Even if I don't know the root shalach, I see a 3-letter word with a patak comment, or sorry, with a kametz patak pattern, and that tells me cow perfect 3ms. All right, so shalach means sent. Okay, now I used to say shalach means he sent. I'm not doing that anymore because some of you are getting confused in a sentence like this, where you're going to incorporate he into the English translation. That's going to cause problems for you. Shalach means sent. Okay, the root means to send, but the cow perfect form is simple past tense. All right, so we're going to gloss this with sent. We're going to note what part of speech it is. It's a verb, okay? What is the function of this? Well, it's the only verb we have, so it's going to be the main action of the sentence. All right, we've parsed it, cow perfect 3ms. We've glossed it, sent. We've noted that it's a verb and that it's the main action. There's really nothing else for us to do with this. So we'll move on to the next word. Ha-melech. Ha-melech, I see a hey. I think, hey, this might be a definite article. So I confirm that by seeing the hey patak dagesh. Anytime you see hey patak dagesh at the beginning of a Hebrew word, 95% chance it's going to be the definite article, if not more, okay? If I take off the hey patak dagesh, I should have a Hebrew word, melech. Melech, I learned, means king. All right, so we've got the king. We've parsed this out as masculine singular. We've noted the definite article. The gloss for melech is going to be king, so this word will be the king. We'll also note that this is a noun, and then we have to ask ourselves, what function does this noun have in the sentence? So far, we've learned 3 functions that a Hebrew noun can have in a sentence. It can serve as the subject. It can serve as the direct object of the verb, that is, the thing that the verb is being done to. In this case, the direct object would be the thing that is sent, whereas the subject would be the thing that is sending. Or the third function that we've learned for a noun in a Hebrew sentence is the object of a preposition. We don't have a preposition here, so it can't be that. Could it be the direct object? Well, a king could be sent, so that works. Does it? Well, let's stop. Since it is definite, if it were the direct object, it would have the definite direct object marker, which it does not. In fact, there's another noun that does have the definite direct object marker. So that tells us right away this is almost certainly not the direct object. So if it's not the object of the preposition, and it's not the direct object, there's only one more function that it can have, and that's subject. But if it's going to be the subject, it has to agree with the verb in gender and number. The verb is masculine singular, so this noun, if it is the subject, has to be masculine singular as well. Sure enough, it is. So certainly, ha-melech is the subject of the verb here, so we're going to note that as well. We've got a masculine singular noun functioning as the subject, and we're going to translate it as the king. There's nothing else for us to do with this word, so we're going to move on. Et ha-navi. The first thing I note is the et particle here. This is marking this definite noun as the direct object of the verb. So I know that I have a noun and that it is functioning as the direct object. Now I need to parse it out and translate it. I've got ha-navi. I've got a hey at the beginning, so hey, it might be the definite article. I can confirm that by seeing the hey patak dagesh. If I take that hey patak dagesh off, I'm left with navi, which is a Hebrew word that I know. It's the word prophet. So this would be translated as the prophet. So I've identified this as a noun functioning as the direct object of the verb. I've parsed it as masculine singular, and I've translated it as the prophet. There's nothing left for me to do here. I have analyzed every single word in this Hebrew sentence. The problem is some of you are stopping there and adding a period. So you've got he sent, the king, the prophet, period. And so your sentence ends up being, your sentence ends up being, go back to English. He sent, because that's what shalach means, the king, he sent the king, because that's what ha-melech means, and the prophet, because that's what et ha-navi means. And then you put a period there and you think you're done. You're not done. You've only done the first stage. Now you need to do the second stage, which is you ask, how would English build this sentence? Because if you stop here, you've got a problem. If you stop here, what's your subject? He. Well, he is not your subject in the Hebrew sentence. The king was your subject. In this English sentence, what function does the king have? If you say he sent the king the prophet, the king ends up being the indirect object. That's not what the Hebrew sentence says. The Hebrew sentence has the king as the subject. Now, the prophet does end up being the direct object in both, which is good, but this sentence means something different than what the Hebrew sentence is saying, okay? In this sentence, the prophet is being sent to a king. And the Hebrew sentence, the king is the one sending the prophet. Those have two different meanings. This is not an English translation of the Hebrew sentence. So how do we get an English translation of the Hebrew sentence? Well, the first thing that we have to do is we look at our sentence, and then we ask our buddy English, hey, English, what do you want first in order to build your sentence? English says, give me the subject first. All right, so we come over here and we say, which one was our subject again? That was Hamelech. How did we translate this? The king. All right, grab the king and bring it over here, the king. All right, English, what do you want after the subject? English says, give me the verb next. So we come back to our Hebrew and we find the verb. Which one was the verb? Shalach. How did we translate that? Sent. Again, if you gloss this as he sent, that he needs to be in parentheses, because you're not going to use he if you have a subject in English. Excuse me. The only reason why we incorporate he in here is in the situation where the Hebrew doesn't have a subject, because English demands a subject of some sort. So we'll just use the pronoun in that case. But we don't use the pronoun here because we've got an explicit subject in Hebrew. The king, bring the verb over, sent, the king sent. All right, English, what do you want after the verb? Give me the direct object. We come back to our Hebrew sentence. Which one was our direct object? Et hanavi. All right, how did we translate this? The prophet. So we bring the prophet over. The king sent the prophet. Put a period in, you're done. That's how you translate a sentence in Hebrew, okay? So what you need to do is stage one, you need to analyze every Hebrew word, like you guys have been doing. Most of you have been doing great at that, okay? But you can't stop there, because if you do, you get this sentence. He sent the king the prophet. This is not a correct translation. The correct translation is the king sent the prophet. And the only way you're going to end up with this sentence instead of this sentence is if you go through stage two, asking, how do I build this sentence in English? English, what do you want first? It wants the subject. What do you want after the subject? It wants the verb. What do you want after the verb? Then it takes the direct object, okay? That's what you have to do if you're going to translate the Hebrew into an English sentence. All right, so what happens in the situation, like we've had Hamelech here, what if our Hebrew sentence doesn't have an explicit subject like that? Let's go down here to, I guess the only good example, and it's not great. Let's try, we don't want the negatives. All right, we'll use this one even though I don't like Fatato's translation, but we'll use number 5 here. All right, so we've got et haaretz shamarnu. All right, again, word by word, start with the first word. We anticipate, but we don't demand that that first word is going to be a verb. But we see et here, and we know we don't have a verb. Et marks the definite direct object. Sure enough, we see a definite article after it, and it's on aretz. Okay, now aretz is not the word we learned. We learned eretz. I discussed this a little bit. This is a unique phenomenon. I think it has to do with the fact that eretz is accented on the aleph, and that's why it shifts to match the kametz here. I think I remember learning that Hebrew doesn't like the a pattern, the kametz segel pattern, but I may be wrong about that. There's some obscure rule explaining why this shifts to a kametz. Don't worry too much about it. You're not going to have to compose Hebrew. You just need to recognize, again, when you're reading, look at the letters first. Aleph, resh, sadeh. That should remind you of eretz. So if we take off the definite article, we get land. If we translate it with the definite article, we get the land. All right? This is a noun. How is it functioning? Well, the definite direct object marker tells us that it is the direct object of the verb. It is feminine singular. I know eretz looks masculine because it doesn't have an ending, specifically a kametz ending, but eretz is feminine. All right? So we've parsed it. We've identified it as a noun. We've identified it as the direct object. We've translated it, the earth, or the land. There's nothing else for us to do. Let's move on to the next word. The next word, this is our verb. We can tell because we see a cal perfect, 1CP suffix, on a 3-letter root. We see the kametz batak pattern in the root. So this is a good giveaway that we've got a verb here. So let's first parse the verb. Again, we said it was cal perfect, 1CP. Now let's figure out the meaning of the root. Shamar means to guard or to keep watch. So if we were going to translate this in the cal perfect, this would be something like guarded. Guarded or kept watch. All right. Again, if you're going to say I guarded or I kept watch, keep that I in parentheses, but you don't even need to add it yet. All right. So we have parsed the word. We've identified it as a verb. It's the only verb in the sentence, so it's going to be the main action of the sentence. And we have glossed it as guarded. All right. Now we're done with stage 1, but we don't just put a period there. We don't just say the earth guarded. That doesn't work. What we do now is we go to stage 2. We ask, how would English build this sentence? And so English, what do you want first in your sentence? I want the subject. Okay, so we come back over here and we look for our subject. Unfortunately, there is no subject in this Hebrew sentence. It has a direct object and it has a verb. So what do? This is why we've been putting I in parentheses here. We have to infer the subject from the form of the verb. Shamarnu is only going to be used, this form is only going to be used when the subject is first common plural. So what is the first common plural pronoun in English? That's we. And that's why when you create these flashcards for the suffixes, you really should create these, the translation we here instead of like 1CP, so that when you see new, you're thinking we in your mind. All right, so since we don't have a subject in Hebrew, we have to infer the appropriate English pronoun, subject pronoun. All right, so we bring down we, all right? We guarded the land. well, I just jumped ahead, but we. Okay, so we bring down we. Now English, what do you want after the subject? Give me the verb. Okay, we decided that shamarnu is the verb. What did shamarnu translate as? Guarded. All right, so let's bring guarded down. We guarded. All right, English, what do you want after the verb? Give me the direct object. We translated the direct object as the land or the earth. So now we'll bring that down. The land. We guarded the land. You can put your period in there. Ignore this parenthetical information. The only reason why he puts this here is because the definite direct object is fronted in the sentence. It's out of its typical location. Normally, the direct object is going to follow the verb, and if there is a subject, there's a bird outside my window that's really getting on my nerves here. It's causing my wife to crack up, and that's causing me to crack up. Typically, the direct object is going to follow the verb, and if there's a subject, the direct object will typically follow the subject as well. Since we don't have a subject, we would expect the verb to come first and then the direct object. But that's not what happens. For some reason, the author has fronted the direct object, which probably implies some sort of emphasis. There are other reasons for fronting the direct object, but that's probably what it indicates. And so if we want to bring that out in our sentence, I don't recommend doing it. I recommend bringing this out in commentary or something like that. But the effect that fronting this would have would be to emphasize that what we're really concerned about, the topic, if you will, of this sentence is the land. We guarded the land. That's what the attention is on in this sentence. The attention is on the land. We guarded the land, not something else. What we guarded was the land. And so that's why he puts the parenthetical note. We guarded the land, not something else like the city. All right. So you guys certainly should not be providing information like this in your translation. The only reason he's doing it is he's pointing out that the land is fronted here. And so there's some sort of emphasis going on. I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to review the exercises from lesson 7, but I wanted to give you a couple examples of translation here, going through that two-stage process where first you do analyze the Hebrew sentence, which again, you guys have been doing well, but you can't stop there. You can't just put a period there and think you're done. You now have to ask, how would English communicate this? How would English build this sentence? English is going to start with a subject, and it must have a subject. But you're not going to use a subject noun and a subject pronoun. Don't overlap. Don't translate sentence 1 here as the king he sent the prophet. And certainly don't translate it as he sent the king the prophet. We already talked about that. But don't double your pronoun with an explicit subject. It's just the king sent, not the king he sent. All right? Similarly, when you don't have a subject in Hebrew, you have to come up with one in English, and so the safest subject to come up with is the pronoun that corresponds to the verb form. Here, the 1CP pronoun corresponds to the 1CP verb form, so we have to supply the 1CP pronoun, which is we. But again, you have to start with your subject in English, then bring in your verb, then bring in your direct object. Word order is much more flexible in Hebrew. It is not flexible in English. If we mix this sentence up and we say guarded the land we, or the land guarded we, or the land we guarded, that's not the same meaning. If we were to say the land we guarded, that's not even a complete sentence in English. So again, simple rule. In order to have an English translation, it must be both a translation and it must be English. If your English translation is not English, if it's not how English speaks, it's not an English translation. Keep that in mind.